Have you ever felt that subtle shift in the air, maybe a sense of underlying weight, or just found yourself really craving silence amidst all the noise?
Oh, definitely.
We all get those periods where things just feel, I don't know, a bit foggier, or maybe old feelings resurface, things you thought were dealt with.
Yeah, like something's bubbling up from below.
Exactly. It's like the universe is giving us a nudge, sometimes gently, sometimes, well, not so gently, saying, pay attention.
Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive into a specific cosmic alignment that really speaks to those exact sensations. Saturn retrograde in Pisces.
Mm.
Now, for anyone less familiar, think of Saturn as the cosmic teacher, maybe, bringing lessons, structure.
Accountability, definitely.
Right, accountability. And Pisces, that's our deep end, isn't it? Spirituality, intuition, where boundaries get blurry.
The oceanic depths of the psyche, you could say.
Yeah, so when Saturn appears to go backwards retrograde, its focus turns inward. It makes us revisit and reevaluate lessons. Here, it's about our spiritual foundations, our karmic patterns.
It's not just some abstract astrological thing happening way out there.
No, exactly. Our sources are calling it a profound invitation for a karmic reckoning, a time when, past actions and consequences really come into focus. Our guide for this deep dive is Tarot by High C. We've got two really fascinating pieces from them for today, September 1st, 2025.
Good stuff.
One's a concise astrological update on a Saturn retrograde. The other is this captivating allegorical piece they call a StoryScope. It's their unique way of using narrative. This one's titled The Weave of Shadows and Dawn.
And it really paints a picture.
It does. So our mission today is basically to unpack these sources for you. We'll look at what this astrological period means personally, and then journey through that story, which illuminates the bigger collective themes.
Think of it as connecting the dots between the stars and, well, us.
Yeah, a shortcut to seeing how these big cosmic cycles mirror what's going on inside. Okay, so with that kind of heavy, foggy feeling maybe in mind, let's dig into what Saturn retrograde in Pisces actually signifies according to the source material. It starts now, September 1st, runs through February 13th next year. What should we anticipate?
Well, what's really striking about the astrological update is how visceral it is right off the bat. It tells us flat out to expect a time where old grief resurfaces.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and spiritual shortcuts fail, the fog thickens. You might literally feel heavier, maybe sleep more fitfully, or just deeply, deeply crave silence.
That description, it's spot on with what we were just talking about, that feeling.
Exactly. It's not just random symptoms, it's Saturn planet lessons, discipline asking us to face the emotional and spiritual stuff that Pisces with its deep waters has been holding, maybe stuff we've ignored.
So it's definitely not some distant event. It reaches right into our personal experience, our bodies even. Precisely. And the source really emphasizes that the karmic lessons we've been journeying through since March 2023 are reaching their conclusion.
Okay, conclusion, so an ending.
Well, yes, but
Yeah.
more like a culmination, where we see the results of past choices, past actions. Saturn demands that accountability, right?
Right.
And in Pisces, that accountability is tied to our spiritual integrity, our emotional honesty. So it could bring, a real sense of reward or satisfaction if the work's been done, or
Or it could shine a light on where we still need to tidy up.
exactly, where we need to grow.
And that leads perfectly into what seems really key for these next 5 months. The source says it's not just about feeling the weight, it offers an opportunity to wrap up any lingering lessons and ensure that all loose ends are neatly tied up. That sounds less like, I don't know, a gentle suggestion and more like,
At a final exam.
yeah, a final exam for the soul, maybe.
It really is. And it forces a big question on us. How are we actually living our spiritual beliefs? Are they integrated into our day-to-day interactions?
The source directly challenges us. Assess whether we truly walk our spiritual talk. It even calls out spiritual bypassing. Are we just throwing around phrases like, we are all one, to feel spiritual?
Right, without actually doing the work or feeling the connection.
Exactly. Using it to avoid the methy stuff, the
Yeah.
difficult emotions, the uncomfortable truths about inequality, maybe. This retrograde pulls back that curtain.
So it's really a time that demands genuine introspection and maturity, especially around creativity, emotions, our spiritual life.
Yeah.
Moving beyond just the surface level.
Absolutely. Think about it.
Yeah.
Saturn in Pisces often pushes us to build structure around the boundless structure for our spirituality, form for our compassion, maybe healing those deep old wounds. The retrograde just amplifies that by making us revisit the foundations. Have we built on solid ground? Or have we used spiritual ideas to escape, to bypass pain? If the foundations are weak or, inauthentic,
They'll show themselves now.
they will. It's an invitation to rebuild, but properly this time.
That's a really potent way to look at it. Okay, so we've got the personal, the internal shifts. But to really grasp the scale of this karmic reckoning, how it fits into a bigger human story,
Yeah.
we need to turn to that other source, High Seas StoryScope, the weave of shadows and dawn.
Ah, yes. It's quite something.
It really takes these individual feelings we've been talking about and paints them on this huge, epic canvas, gives us a grand narrative.
It does. What's so powerful about the weave of shadows and dawn is how it takes that personal astrological vibe and just blows it up into this species-wide story. It gives so much context to the feelings, the challenges in the astrological update.
Yeah, it helps you see your own little journey as part of something massive, a collective shift.
Exactly.
So the StoryScope kicks off in an age of silence. It says, star kingdoms had fractured and the archives of truth were scattered. Humanity was under this heavy fog, restless dreams, desperate for silence. Why? Because an old grief had awakened. And not just personal stuff, but a wound buried deep in the marrow of time. The source is specific. Wars forgotten, but not forgiven. Betrayals carved into the collective soul. Promises of unity that had become only words.
Wow, that opening just paints this incredibly stark picture of a collective shadow, doesn't it? It perfectly mirrors that individual old grief resurfacing from the astrology.
It really does.
And what's crucial there is the idea that these collective wounds, they don't just vanish, they echo. They manifest as that fog, that deep unrest. It suggests that real healing, personally and globally, means facing these forgotten parts.
Yeah.
You can't build something new on foundations full of cracks.
Makes sense. And then the story moves into the first cycle, the fog of shortcuts. It talks about seekers facing this fog, this discomfort, who looked for quick paths.
Ah, the shortcuts, yes.
Things like temples lit with crystal fire, rituals streamed through celestial networks, words of enlightenment chanted without understanding. Sound familiar?
Oh, very familiar. It's a brilliant allegory for that whole spiritual bypassing thing we mentioned, instead of the hard internal work.
Chasing the shiny objects.
Exactly. They declared, we are all one. But the story says their actions, hierarchies, divisions betrayed the truth. That's when the fog got thicker. The shortcuts led to labyrinths of illusion, crumbling masks. The source calls it a true beginning of reckoning.
It's so easy to mistake knowing about something spiritual for actually practicing it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Using the fancy words to avoid real connection, real messy truth.
That connection between the story and the astrology is so sharp there. It shows the real impact when words and actions don't match up, both for us and, well, collectively. So this superficiality leads to the second cycle, the weight of sleep. The story says people grew heavier, their dreams fractured. Sleep wasn't an escape anymore.
No rest there.
No. Instead, visions of ancestors' grief, the echoes of chains, the cries of forgotten wars. And it was in that forced silence, that discomfort, that they finally heard the deeper voice.
And what was the voice?
Not a god, not a prophet, but the eternal weaving of cause and consequence karma itself, whispering that cycles must close before new world can open.
That is fascinating. So the very things from the astrological hit, update the heaviness, the restless sleep, the story shows them as a necessary turning point. Almost like a divine intervention.
Yeah, like the universe had to make things uncomfortable.
Right. Force us into silence, because it's only when the distractions and shortcuts are gone that the real truth gets through. It's not punishment, it's an intervention. Surrender to the silence, listen to karma, the ultimate accountant.
And this big shift leads into the third cycle, the knot of endings. From that silence, figures called the tenders arose.
The tenders, I like them.
Me too. They gathered the frayed ends of unfinished stories, traveled around, seeking out unacknowledged burdens, and they bound wounds with words of truth, not platitudes, facing grief directly, naming it, honoring it, until it transformed into wisdom.
That just perfectly sums up the astrological call to wrap up lingering lessons, tie up those loose ends. The tenders show us, hey, no shortcuts left.
Right.
It's slow, painstaking work, generational even. Plowing fields of sorrow into gardens of memory, building practices rooted in action, not pretense, learning that crucial lesson. Walking the path was not the same as speaking of it.
So for us right now, that means what? Doing the hard yards?
I think so. Confronting our own unresolved stuff. Apologizing where needed, forgiving where possible, making amends. Real work with ourselves and others.
Okay. The transformation then continues in the fourth cycle, the integration. Centuries pass, creativity blooms, but, and this is key, not born from escapism, but from integration. The fog starts to thin.
Ah, integration, that's the goal.
Communities get built not just on nice words, but on shared work. Feeding the hungry, healing the wounded, remembering the dead. Real tangible stuff.
And here, that phrase, "we are all one," it stops being just a slogan.
Exactly. It became a daily act, visible and hands extended, burdens shared, and truths spoken even when painful.
That just perfectly embodies the maturity and creativity, emotions, spirit that the astrology points towards. It's a vision of what happens when the spiritual talk becomes the spiritual walk.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying unity, they lived it. Abstract ideals turned into actual service, real connection. That's the integration Saturn in Pisces is pushing for.
And then finally, the fifth cycle, the dawn beyond. When the karmic threads were tied and no loose ends remained, the people were transformed. They'd walk through the grief, face the endings, built unity on sacrifice and presence.
Sacrifice and presence.
Yeah.
Powerful words.
Aren't they? The fog dissolves completely. The stars were seen with clarity, not as distant gods, but as companions, witnesses.
Which signals a new era, not of shortcuts, nor of bypassing, but of true integration, where spirit and practice walked hand in hand. It's this profound vision of what real culmination looks like. Spiritual maturity, individually and collectively.
That's the ultimate promise, maybe, of getting through this Saturn retrograde work.
I think it is. The clarity, the genuine connection, the peace that comes from facing the shadows and tying up those karmic loose ends, living a life where your inner reality matches your outer actions.
So let's bring this right back. What does all this mean for you listening now as you navigate this Saturn retrograde in Pisces from today until mid-February?
Well, that StoryScope, it gives us a really profound roadmap for these next 5 months, doesn't it? It tells us the initial discomfort, that grief surfacing, the restless sleep, the fog. It's not a punishment.
It's an invitation.
Exactly, an invitation to move past the fog of shortcuts and into the knot of endings. That's where the real healing, the real integration happens. This whole period is a cosmic nudge to mature, to line up your beliefs with your actions, build a life rooted in real compassion, starting with yourself.
So this deep dive really shows that the call to wrap up loose ends and walk your spiritual talk isn't just some random astrological advice. It's part of this huge, timeless journey. It's an opportunity right now to transform your own shadows into light, not by dodging the hard bits, but by facing them, like the tenders in the story. Doing that sometimes slow, hard work that leads to real freedom, real clarity.
Which brings up a really important question for you to consider. Looking at your own life right now, during this period, what old grief or lingering lesson is asking for your attention?
Yeah, what's tapping you on the shoulder?
Right. Are you willing to sit with the discomfort, the confusion maybe, knowing it's part of moving towards deeper integration? How can you use these next 5 months to shift from just talking about unity or compassion to actually embodying it in your daily life, making spirit and practice walk hand in hand?
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to mull over. If that new era in the StoryScope began when spirit and practice walked hand in hand, and unity was built on sacrifice and presence, what personal sacrifice, maybe of pretense, maybe of comfort, maybe of avoidance, what sacrifice are you willing to make starting today to truly walk your own path, to begin weaving your own shadow into light?